Well, here I am in a wonderful setting. We're on the edge of Dartmoor, and I'm very privileged to be with Kate Goad this morning. And we've just walked up to this wonderful small tor. It's a wonderful autumn morning, and it's a glorious view from here, right around Devonshire's wonderful landscape. So, Kate, it's great to have a bit of time with you today, and to also talk a little bit about the launch of your new book, which is 8 Buzzards Rising, isn't it?
It is, yes, that is the name of my recently published poetry pamphlet, and it's also a great pleasure to be here with you, Phil.
Well, thank you for saying that, Kate. You've been writing poetry for a very long time. You say in your bio from childhood. Where did that inspiration and creativity come from, would you say?
I would say that it's a gift that I was born with, to have a love of language and respond to language right from early childhood. I learned to read when I was 3, and that launched me into the world of books and writing. And poetry was something we were encouraged to do at school, and I always enjoyed it.
So your interest from childhood really grew from there, and you decided you wanted to more formally study creative writing and poetry?
That's not really quite how it unfolded. I think, like most people in the teenage angst years, I wrote heart-wrenching poetry. And then, really, apart from very occasionally, it was something that I left behind. And then came to more perhaps when I was older, after I'd had a few children. I started writing now and then. But a lot of what I wrote I didn't consider to be poetry because it didn't rhyme. It didn't necessarily have verses or stanzas. And it wasn't really until I went to university as a mature student in my early 40s and did poetry modules that I came to understand that what I was writing was considered poetry, and there were a lot of other people writing like that. And that gave me great encouragement, and that drew me back into taking my writing more seriously.
So tell me how you came to be working with prisoners in prisons, Kate.
Well, that was a consequence really of doing my degree at university, which was a creative arts degree, and at the same time I joined a choir. And it was just during a conversation, when you're meeting people, they say, "Oh, what do you do? What are you up to?" And I was telling people about my degree, and also I think at that point I'd gone on to my MA in poetry, and someone overheard and said, "Oh, would you come and do some workshops in HMP Bristol?" And my brain said no and my mouth said yes, and I didn't hear anything about it for quite a long time. And then the woman did contact me again. And so to begin with, I started doing poetry workshops there, and then I went on to run creative writing course.
So, Kate, there's clearly a strong connection between you and the landscape, particularly this spectacular landscape of Dartmoor. Has that been the driving force in the content and thrust of your poems?
Yes, I always feel a connection to land, and now I'm here, it's this is where my connection is focused, and I was drawn here by intuition and instinct. When I was living in France, I also felt very connected to the land I was living on there, and wrote poems about that place too.
In more recent years, you've been working with the dying, and when we look at the cycles and the seasons of nature, we come to understand that all living things go through their cycle of growth, maturity, and decline and death. And that connection between that cycle in nature and working with the dying, what has that taught you, and how has that informed your writing?
Well, certainly working with the dying has informed my writing, and I've written 2 or 3 poems about the people and how that's affected me specifically. But connecting it with cycles in nature, we are nature. We are not apart from nature, we are a part of nature, and what we see unfolding in the wheel of the year and the seasons, we see unfolding in our own lives, as you've so eloquently put it yourself. In this area here, there's a whole cluster of these remains of Bronze Age hut circles. There was obviously a settlement here at some point, and where we've been walking is what's called a leat, and that was engineering works to transport water for miles and miles across the moors.
So Kate's brought me to this wonderful part on the moor where we have a wonderful stone circle that goes back to Neolithic times, and I can see how your work is completely inspired by this kind of landscape, Kate. And behind you you've got a wonderful tree as well, and I can see, reading your poetry, how you bring these environments and these settings to life, and you give them a dramatic meaning, which really jumps off the page when you read the words. And now it's been revealed, the living aspects of your poetry, how you can bring that forth on the page from these kind of landscapes.
Yes, it's being close to nature, connection with trees and the land, and the ancestors, particularly this circle. I don't know why. It's bigger than the rest, and I always imagine that it may have been some communal space where the people from the settlement would gather. And whenever I come here, which I often do for breakfast, I bring my breakfast here. I'm so inspired and immersed really in this silence, this depth and the sense of the ancestors here. And that is the kind of thing that inspires me to write about nature and to write about my neighbours, my fellow creatures that live in the landscape with me as well, the birds and the animals and the plants. Mother Moor, I am here, Mother Moor. You called me and I came. My arrival was inelegant, staggered and miraculous. Nothing could go wrong when I was sailing under your stars. Uphill from the home hearth, my brown boots found a way to your land that reaches and rests like skin over a drum. There I was, in the eyes of the foal who skittered and shat at my approach, and the black-faced horned sheep who remained unmoved. Letting your damp air pass by osmosis through my skin, finding my first native words of this place and time. Come, Mother Moor, let us dance, accompanied by a wind and water song, reeling on the cadence of the distant sky-land line. Do you remember me now? Your little one has come.
Well, I'd like to thank Kate for showing me some of her favourite places here on the moor, and her inspiration for a lot of her work. It's been wonderful to share that with you, and just to remind you that her book is now out, Eight Buzzards Rising, and I believe you go to events and various poetry events around the area. Is that right, Kate?
Yes, that's right. Obviously, like everything else, that became very restricted with the lockdowns and the pandemic. Previously to that, I was going to an event in Chagford, which is a village just 3 miles away, called Outspoken. I used to go there regularly. They're usually monthly things, and also I go to Taking the Mic in Exeter, run by a lovely guy, Tim King. And yes, my book is available on my website, and that's www.kategold.co.uk.
I will put that information in the description box below, just in case you didn't catch that.
Yes.
So thank you again, Kate, and wishing you well with the book and your future poems.
Thank you very much, Phil. It's been a pleasure.